Fire consumed my lungs in my previous life, a parting gift from the husband who stripped me of my empire to crown his mistress. Today my eyes snapped open to the vibration of my phone. It was him, begging for ransom. This time, I pressed decline and kept my millions. Smoke. The phantom stench of burning oak and melting plastic still clawed at the back of my throat. I bolted upright, gasping for air, my hands frantically patting my chest. No burns, no agonizing pain. Just the cool, smooth touch of Egyptian cotton sheets against my skin. I was sitting in the master bedroom of my Mercer Island estate. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long, peaceful shadows across the hardwood floor. My breathing slowed as my eyes locked onto the digital clock on the nightstand. October 14th, a violent shiver wrecked my body. It was the exact day it had all begun. The day my life had been systematically dismantled. In my previous life on this exact morning, my husband, Dominic Hale, had called me in a blind panic. He claimed that loan sharks had kidnapped his vulnerable, innocent executive assistant, Vanessa Croft. He had wept through the receiver, swearing that if I didn't wire $5 million to an offshore Cayman account within the hour, they would kill her. And then they would come for us. I had been so deeply, blindingly in love with him. I had rushed to my private terminal, bypassed my financial advisors, and wired the funds. That $5 million was the first domino. It opened the door for Dominic to exploit my accounts, forge my signature on power of attorney documents, and ultimately orchestrate a hostile takeover of my family's legacy, the Rhodes Meridian Group, and my reward for saving Vanessa. 3 years later, I was locked inside my own inherited summer house in Aspen. As it burned to the ground, listening to Dominic and Vanessa laughing outside near his Porsche. The kidnapping had been a complete fabrication, a clever extortion plot to secure seed money for Vanessa's vanity luxury brand. Bees. My iPhone vibrated on the marble nightstand, jolting me out of the horrific memory. The caller ID flashed. Dominic, hubby. A slow, chilling smile spread across my face, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. The universe had folded in on itself to give me a second chance, and I was not going to waste a single second of it being a victim. I picked up the phone. I didn't answer immediately. I let it ring 4 times, savoring the control before sliding my thumb across the screen. Natalie, oh my God, Nat, thank God, you picked up. Dominic's voice was a masterclass in theatrical panic. He was breathing heavily, the sound of rustling fabric and distant, muffled shouting playing perfectly in the background. You have to listen to me. I'm in trouble. Vanessa, she got taken. Some men grabbed her outside the Bellevue office. They dragged me into a van. They have guns, Nat. I leaned back against the plush headboard, inspecting my perfectly manicured nails. Guns, how terrifying, Dominic. They want $5 million, he screamed, his voice cracking with artificial terror. If we don't wire it to the account I'm about to text you, they're going to kill her. And they know where we live, Natalie. They'll come for you next. Please, I know it's a lot of liquidity to pull, but you have to save us. In my past life, this was the exact moment I had dropped to my knees, sobbing, promising I would do whatever it took. Today I let a heavy, suffocating silence stretch over the line. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. Natalie, are you there? I am, I said, my voice as cold and flat as a frozen lake. But $5 million is a steep price for a cheating husband and a mediocre assistant. It sounds like a you problem, Dominic. Good luck. Wait, what, Natalie? You can't. I ended the call. I didn't block his number. I needed his incoming messages for a paper trail. I tossed the phone onto the bed and immediately picked up the encrypted landline resting on my desk. I dialed a number I knew by heart. Arthur Higgins, A gruff, aristocratic voice answered on the second ring. Arthur was the senior partner at Higgins & O'Rourke, my late father's most ruthless bulldog of a lawyer. Arthur, it's Natalie. Cancel all your morning meetings. We are initiating Protocol Black. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Protocol Black was an extreme asset protection strategy Arthur and my father had drafted years ago, designed only for the absolute worst-case scenario, a catastrophic corporate attack or a predatory spouse. Protocol Black. Arthur asked, his tone instantly shifting from casual to razor-sharp. Natalie, that effectively liquidates your domestic footprint. You're talking about moving over $80 million into blind trusts and offshore holdings in Delaware and the Isle of Man. Once we trigger this, Dominic won't be able to access enough money to buy a cup of coffee. What happened? What happened is that I woke up, I said simply. Dominic is attempting to extort me for $5 million under the guise of a kidnapping. I want the joint accounts drained to zero. I want my personal wealth transferred into the Vanguard Irrevocable Trust. And I want the title of this Mercer Island house transferred to a Shell LLC immediately. He thinks he's playing chess, Arthur. Let's take the board away. Give me 45 minutes. Arthur said, the sound of furious typing already echoing in the background. By the time the banks open at 9:00 a.m., Dominic Hale will be a ghost in your financial system. I hung up. I walked into my cavernous walk-in closet and bypassed the soft pastel cashmere sweaters Dominic always liked me in. Instead, I pulled out a sharp, midnight blue Tom Ford power suit. I was dressing for a funeral. His. By the time my chauffeured Maybach pulled up to the towering glass facade of the Rhodes Meridian headquarters in downtown Seattle, my phone had blown up with 47 text messages and 14 missed calls. Dominic, Natalie, please. They're pointing a gun at my head. Dominic, why aren't you answering? Are you calling the police? Do not call the police. Dominic, Natalie, if I die, my blood is on your hands. Wire the money. I read them with a detached amusement, sipping my black espresso. He was overplaying his hand. The panic was shifting from fake hostage terror to realizing the mark isn't paying up panic. I stepped out of the car, the crisp October wind whipping through my hair, and walked into the lobby. The security guard snapped to attention. I bypassed my usual executive suite and went straight to the subterranean floor, entering the secure, soundproof boardroom, where Arthur was already waiting alongside Harrison Cole, my chief financial officer. Morning, gentlemen, I said, dropping my Hermes Birkin onto the mahogany table. It's done, Natalie, Arthur said, sliding a thick, leather-bound folio toward me. As of 9:02 a.m., every joint account you held with Mr. Hale has been legally drained to the minimum maintenance balance of $5. Your personal assets, stock portfolios, and real estate holdings have been successfully shielded under the Vanguard Trust. Because you inherited them prior to the marriage, they are legally protected from communal property laws, especially under the clauses we just enacted. Excellent, I murmured, flipping through the documents. There's more, Harrison interjected, adjusting his glasses. Per your instructions, I looked deep into Apex Solutions. Apex Solutions was the tech subsidiary I had foolishly allowed Dominic to run as CEO. It was supposed to be his pet project, a way for him to feel like a real businessman instead of just the heiress's husband. In my past life, he had used Apex to secretly funnel Rhodes Meridian money out of the country. What did you find? I asked. He's severely over-leveraged, Harrison said with a predatory grin. Dominic has been quietly taking out high-interest corporate loans under Apex's name, assuming the Rhodes Meridian parent company would backstop the debt. He's accumulated nearly $15 million in liabilities. And the assets? I asked. Mostly intellectual property and 2 distribution centers in Oregon, Harrison replied. Transfer the IP and the real estate back to the parent company immediately. I ordered. Cite a breach of internal compliance. Leave the debt right where it is. I want Apex Solutions hollowed out by noon. Let Dominic be the CEO of a $15 million crater. As Harrison nodded and began firing off emails to the legal department, the boardroom door clicked open. Gideon Pierce walked in. Gideon was a high-end private investigator who specialized in corporate espionage and tracking cheating billionaires. He looked like a tired accountant, which was precisely what made him so dangerous. Nobody ever saw him coming. "Morning, boss," Gideon grunted, tossing a manila envelope onto the table. "You owe me a bonus for the rush job. If you have what I want, I'll double it," I said, tearing the envelope open. A stack of high-definition 8x10 glossy photographs slid out onto the polished wood. I spread them out, a bitter, triumphant laugh escaping my lips. There was Dominic, my terrified, kidnapped husband. And there was Vanessa Croft, his abducted assistant. They weren't in a dark van. They weren't tied to chairs in a dingy warehouse. They were lounging on a private, sun-drenched balcony at the Fairmont Chateau in Whistler, British Columbia. Vanessa was wearing a white La Perla swimsuit, sipping a mimosa, while Dominic kissed her neck, laughing. In one exceptionally clear photo taken through a telephoto lens, Dominic was holding his phone to his ear. His face twisted into an expression of fake, agonizing grief. Timestamp on that photo is 7:45 a.m. Gideon noted, tapping the picture. "Right when he was making the ransom call to you. They checked into the penthouse suite last night under the name Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Classic. $5 million. I whispered, staring at Vanessa's smug, flawless face. They wanted $5 million of my father's money so she could launch her pathetic clothing line, and they could run away together. "Do we call the authorities?" Arthur asked, looking at the photos with profound disgust. "Extortion is a federal crime." "No," I said, instantly gathering the photos. "If we call the cops, he goes to jail. Jail is too easy. Jail provides 3 meals a day and a bed. He wanted to play a game of wealth and power. I'm going to let him play it until he starves." I pulled out my phone and opened my American Express app. I navigated to the Centurion Black Card, authorized under Dominic's name. The card was tied exclusively to my personal fortune. With one tap, I cancelled it. Reported stolen. Frozen indefinitely. "Gideon," I said, not looking up from my screen. "I want you to keep eyes on them. They're at a luxury resort where the penthouse runs $3,000 a night, and they just ordered room service on a dead card. The fallout is going to be spectacular. Consider it done." Gideon smirked, turning on his heel and walking out. I sat back in my leather chair, feeling the power humming in my veins. In my past life, I had been the naive, trusting wife who rushed to save a monster. I had lost my dignity, my empire, and my life. Not this time. My phone buzzed again on the table. It wasn't a text this time. It was an incoming call from Dominic. I answered it, putting it on speaker for Arthur and Harrison to hear. "Natalie," Dominic hissed, but the fake panic from earlier had been replaced by a very real high-pitched anxiety. "Natalie, what is going on with the accounts? My captors, they tried to access the funds to secure a deposit, and the card was declined." He was lying. He had just tried to pay a bartender or order a massage, and the black card had bounced. "Oh, sweetheart, it's a disaster," I lied, smoothly infusing my voice with breathless panic. "The IRS, the what?" Dominic stammered. "The IRS, Dominic. They raided the corporate accounts this morning. They claimed there were massive irregularities with your subsidiary Apex Solutions. They froze everything. My personal accounts, the joint accounts, the credit lines. I'm sitting in the dark in the mansion. Right now the federal agents just confiscated my laptop." "What?" Dominic shrieked. It was the loudest, most genuine sound of terror he had ever produced. I could practically hear Vanessa hyperventilating in the background. They froze everything, but the ransom. The kidnappers. I told them about the kidnappers. I cried out, covering my mouth to muffle my laughter. Arthur had to turn away, his shoulders shaking. But the feds said they can't authorize a wire transfer during a federal audit. Dominic, you have to beg them. Offer them your Rolex. Offer them the Porsche. Natalie, you have to fix this call, Arthur. Call the board. I can't, I wailed. They're taking my phone as evidence. I have to go. Stay brave, Dominic. Stay brave for Vanessa. I hit end call. The boardroom was dead silent for 3 seconds before Harrison let out a loud, booming laugh. I picked up my espresso, taking a slow, satisfying sip. Gentlemen, let's get to work. For the next 48 hours, Gideon Pierce's updates were the most entertaining reality television I had ever consumed. I sat in my pristine, quiet office at Rhodes Meridian, sipping sparkling water and watching the empire of Dominic Hale crumble in real time through Gideon's encrypted file drops. The collapse was as spectacular as it was humiliating. It started at the Fairmont Chateau's front desk. According to Gideon's audio bugs and the hotel staff, he had generously tipped. Dominic and Vanessa had tried to discreetly check out, early realizing their kidnapping scam was temporarily stalled by the fictitious IRS raid. Unfortunately for them, the Fairmont requires a pre-authorization hold for their penthouse suites. When the front desk manager, a strict, impeccably dressed Frenchman named Laurent Dubois, attempted to settle the staggering $12,000 bill for the suite room service, vintage champagne, and Vanessa's emergency spa treatments, the black card declined. There must be a mistake. Dominic's recorded voice echoed from my laptop speakers, dripping with his usual arrogant condescension. Run it again. I am Dominic Hale. My wife is the CEO of Rhodes Meridian. Do you know who we are? I apologize, Monsieur Hale. Laurent Dubois replied, his tone polite but infused with absolute steel. But the terminal indicates the card has been reported stolen. Furthermore, your secondary cards have been frozen by the issuer. How would you like to settle your balance? Panic ensued. Vanessa, maintaining her traumatized hostage persona, had to pretend she didn't know what was happening while secretly seething. Dominic, sweating profusely, pulled out his personal phone to call his network of wealthy friends in Seattle. But I had already been 3 steps ahead. The moment I hung up on Dominic's extortion call the previous morning, I had tasked my PR director with leaking a very specific, heavily redacted rumor to the Seattle elite. The rumor was simple. Dominic Hale was under federal investigation for embezzlement via Apex Solutions, and all his assets were frozen. In high society, association with financial fraud is a terminal disease. So when Dominic called Preston Kensington, his golf buddy and a venture capitalist, Gideon's recording captured the brutal rejection. Top. Preston, man, I'm in a bind in BC. I need you to wire me 20 grand just until this IRS misunderstanding clears up. Dominic, listen, my lawyers are advising me not to have contact with you right now. Preston had stammered. The SEC is sniffing around Apex. I can't have that heat on my fund. Lose my number. Click. Dominic called 5 more people. 5 more rejections. The realization that he was a pariah set in. By hour 24, Laurent Dubois had lost his patience. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police were summoned to the lobby. The image Gideon sent me of Dominic, disheveled, screaming at an impassive RCMP officer, while Vanessa hid her face behind a $400 silk scarf, was getting framed for my guest bathroom. To avoid arrest for defrauding an innkeeper, Dominic had to surrender his diamond Patek Philippe watch and Vanessa's customized Hermes luggage as collateral. They were unceremoniously escorted off the property. Gideon's final update from Canada was a short video clip. It showed my billionaire husband and his glamorous mistress standing at a damp bus stop in the freezing Whistler rain, waiting for a greyhound to take them across the border. Vanessa's mascara was running down her face, and the body language between them was venomous. The illusion of their grand romance was shattering under the weight of poverty. Without my money padding their affair, they were just two miserable liars standing in the mud. They just crossed the border, Gideon announced, walking into my office on Friday afternoon. He dropped a fresh stack of photos onto my desk. Took a bus to Bellingham, then managed to hustle an Uber down to Seattle. They're heading straight for the Mercer Island estate. I checked my Rolex. It was 3:00 p.m. Perfect timing. I smiled, standing up and smoothing down my skirt. Arthur is waiting at the house. It's time to welcome my husband home. The rain had followed them from Canada, turning the Seattle afternoon into a bleak grey wash. I was standing in the grand foyer of the Mercer Island estate, nursing a cup of Earl Grey tea. Arthur stood beside me, holding a black leather briefcase. Outside, two massive, muscular private security guards flanked the wrought-iron gates of the driveway. A beat-up Toyota Prius with an Uber sticker pulled up to the gates. The driver looked annoyed. Dominic and Vanessa stepped out into the pouring rain. They looked like drowned rats. Dominic's designer jacket was soaked, and Vanessa's hair was plastered to her face. Dominic marched up to the keypad and punched in the gate code. A red light flashed. Denied. He punched it again, frantically slapping the metal box. Denied. I tapped a button on the security console in the foyer, activating the intercom. Having trouble with the keys, Dominic, his head snapped up, staring at the security camera. Natalie, open the gate. The feds, the IRS, we escaped the kidnappers. It was a bloodbath, but we made it out. Open the gate. I need a hot shower. And my lawyers. I signaled to the guards. They stepped aside, allowing the heavy iron gates to swing open. Dominic grabbed Vanessa's hand, dragging her up the long, sweeping driveway. I opened the massive oak front doors and stepped out onto the covered portico. Arthur stood firmly at my right shoulder. "Oh, thank God," Dominic gasped, jogging up the steps. He reached out to hug me, putting on a mask of exhausted relief. "Natalie, you have no idea what we've been through. The trauma—" I didn't move. I just looked at him with a gaze so hollow and cold it stopped him dead in his tracks. "I know exactly what you've been through," I said softly, my voice carrying over the sound of the rain. "I know about the penthouse at the Fairmont. I know about the room service. And I know about the pawned Patek Philippe." The color completely drained from Dominic's face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Behind him, Vanessa's eyes widened in sheer terror. She took a slow step backward. You tracked me," Dominic whispered, his eyes darting to Arthur. "Natalie, what is this? I was taken. They forced us to go to Canada." "Stop talking, Dominic. It's embarrassing." I sighed. I turned to Arthur, nodding once. Arthur stepped forward, snapping his briefcase open. He pulled out a thick stack of papers. "Dominic Hale, you are hereby served with a petition for divorce. Furthermore, as of 9:00 a.m. yesterday, Apex Solutions has defaulted on its $15 million corporate debt. Since you signed as the sole guarantor on those high-interest loans entirely outside the purview of Rhodes Meridian, the creditors are coming for you. Personally." "No." Dominic choked out, his knees actually buckling slightly. "No, Apex is a subsidiary. Rhodes Meridian protects the debt. Natalie, you have to cover it. We're married." "We were married," I corrected, stepping closer to the edge of the portico. "And unfortunately, my assets were placed into a blind, irrevocable trust due to an emergency, hostile threat protocol. You are entitled to absolutely nothing. You have no money, Dominic. You have no house. You have $15 million in debt, and the SEC is genuinely looking into your fraudulent loan applications. You set me up," he screamed, dropping the traumatized victim act entirely. His face twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. You bitch, you planned this. No, Dominic, I just let you build your own gallows, I said calmly. You tried to extort $5 million from me to fund your mistress's clothing line. You thought I was stupid. Suddenly, Vanessa shoved past Dominic. She looked frantic, her survival instincts kicking in. Mrs. Hale, Natalie, please. Vanessa begged, her voice shrill. I didn't want to do this. He forced me. Dominic planned the whole kidnapping. He threatened to fire me if I didn't go along with it. I have text messages proving it. I'll give them to you. I'll testify against him. Just please don't ruin me. Dominic whipped around, staring at his lover in absolute disbelief. Vanessa, what the hell are you doing? You begged me to get the seed money for your brand. Shut up, she shrieked at him. You told me she was a naive idiot. You told me it would be easy. You ruined my life. I watched them turn on each other like starving wolves. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. The betrayal, the venom, the absolute destruction of the alliance that had killed me in my previous life. Vanessa, I said, cutting through their screaming match. She turned to me, panting eyes full of desperate hope. Yes, I'll give you the texts right now. I don't need your texts. My private investigator already cloned your iCloud backup. I have the audio recordings of you two laughing about my father's death. I have the receipts. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. You are blacklisted from every corporate entity in North America. You will never work in a respectable office again. Get off my property before I have you arrested for federal extortion. Vanessa let out a choked, devastated sob. She looked at Dominic, spat on his shoes and turned, sprinting down the driveway into the pouring rain, abandoning him completely. Dominic stood alone. The arrogant CEO, the charming husband, the mastermind, reduced to a soaking, wet, shivering shell of a man. Sign the divorce papers, Dominic, I said, gesturing to Arthur, who held out a pen. Contest it, and I turn the extortion evidence over to the FBI. You'll spend 20 years in federal prison. Sign it, take your $15 million in debt, and walk away. He looked at the pen. He looked at the locked gates. He looked at the sprawling, warm mansion that used to be his playground. With a shaking, defeated hand, he took the pen. He leaned against the wet stone pillar of the portico and scrawled his name on the line. Arthur pulled the papers back, inspected the signature, and nodded. Goodbye, Dominic, I said. I turned my back on him, walking into the warmth of my foyer. The heavy oak doors swung shut behind me, the heavy thud echoing like the final nail in his coffin. The fire that had consumed my past life was finally extinguished. I was free. I was wealthy, and I was reborn. Do you love revenge stories where the villain gets exactly what they deserve? If Natalie's savage takedown of her cheating husband had you cheering, hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder to never underestimate a betrayed woman. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more daily jaw-dropping Reborn drama and thrilling payback stories. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in Natalie's shoes